held the message in his hands and felt his anger grow with every word he read. The Galactic Council had finally shown their true face. They no longer hid behind polite words and false promises. This message was a demand. This was an order given to a slave owner to a slave. Humanity would disarm completely. All weapons would be destroyed. All military ships would be handed over to the Council. All defensive stations around Earth would be dismantled. Earth would accept a council governor who would make all major decisions. Humans would work in the mines and factories of the Council's choice. Human scientists would research only what the Council approved. The deadline was 14 days. Was the ambassador of Earth, and he sat alone in the message room, staring at the words on the screen. He had spent the last year and a half trying to negotiate with the Council. He had smiled when they insulted humanity's intelligence. He had swallowed his anger when they offered insulting trade deals. He had compromised on every point that mattered, and it had all led to this. They wanted to own humanity. He stood up and walked to the communication station. He pressed a button and spoke into the speaker. "Get me General Johnson. Tell her it is urgent. Tell her to bring Hart." The response came within 5 minutes and appeared on the screen together. They were sitting in a military command center and could see the glow of screens behind them showing Earth's orbital defenses. "We got it too," said before could speak. "The message came through the military channel 2 hours ago. We kept it quiet while we it." "It is real," said. "I have confirmed it through 3 different diplomatic channels. The Council sent this to every species they control. They are making their move." Hart, the commander of Earth's defense fleet, leaned forward. His face was hard. "They want us to hand over all our weapons, all of them. They think we will just fold." "Can we fight them?" asked. She looked directly at. "That is what I need to know. If we say no, can we actually fight them?" Was quiet for a long moment. The truth was simple. Humanity could not win a war against the Galactic Council. The Council had technology that was centuries ahead of Earth's. They had 1,000 ships to humanity's 200. They had weapons that could destroy a planet. Humanity had nothing compared to them. But was thinking about something else. He was thinking about Earth's history. He was thinking about a species that had survived ice ages and meteor strikes and plagues and wars. He was thinking about humans who had climbed from caves to the stars using nothing but their own brains and their own determination. "We cannot beat them in a direct war," said carefully, "but I am not sure that is the question we need to ask." "Then what is the question?" asked. "The question is this. The Council thinks we are valuable because we are under control. They think they can use us as workers and soldiers. They think we will obey because we are afraid. What happens if we tell them we would rather die free than live as slaves?" Understood, she nodded slowly. "They cannot control a people who have nothing left to lose. They need us to be afraid. They need us to care about survival more than freedom." "Exactly," said. "The Council has always worked the same way. They find a species, they offer them deals. Each deal takes away more freedom. Each compromise requires another compromise. Eventually, the species has nothing left but obedience. But we are not like other species. We know this game already. We have played it before." "So what do we do?" asked. Took a breath. "We tell them no, not politely, not with diplomatic words. We tell them that humanity is done. We are walking away from the table, all of it. And we are going to show them what happens when you push humanity too far." Stood up from her chair. "The Council will cut us off. No trade, no technology, no communication with allied species." "Yes," agreed. "We will be alone." "We have 3 years of supplies stored," said. "If we budget carefully, we can stretch it to 5, but after that we need help from somewhere." "We will find help," said. He did not sound certain, but he sounded determined. "There are species that the Council controls who hate it just as much as we do. There are traders who operate outside Council approval. There are worlds that would welcome a free human species because they are tired of the Council telling them what to do." Nodded. "My crews are ready. They have been ready for months. Every person here knows what the Council really wants. They know we cannot negotiate with people who see us as animals." "Then we need to tell the world," said. "Tomorrow we make a public statement. We tell every human on Earth and every species in the galaxy that Earth is free. We are independent, and we will never bow." Ended the communication and sat back in his chair. He looked at the deadline on the message. 14 days for humanity to decide if it wanted to be slaves or if it wanted to fight for its right to exist as free people. He thought about the people on Earth who had built cities and raised families and created art and music. He thought about the scientists who had discovered ways to reach the stars. He thought about the soldiers who stood on the walls to protect the people they loved. He thought about the children who had been born under the shadow of council control and had never known what it meant to be truly free. Pulled up his personal log and began recording. The message would go to every government leader on Earth. The message would tell them what the council had demanded. The message would give them a choice. But it would also make clear what believed humanity should do. When he finished, he sent it out. Within minutes, messages started coming back. Some were angry, some were scared, but most of them said the same thing. Most of them said, yes, we are ready. We have always been ready. We are just waiting for someone to lead us. Leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. The council had made their mistake. They had thought they could break humanity with demands and threats. They had not understood that humans were strong not because they had the best weapons or the most power. Humans were strong because they refused to accept that they could not survive without someone telling them what to do. Tomorrow the world would know. Humanity was done with the Galactic Council. The real battle was about to begin. Dr. Hayes stood in front of the camera and looked directly into the lens. Behind her, through the transparent wall of the broadcast center, Earth was visible, rotating slowly against the black of space. She had written this message herself, word by word. She had thrown away the diplomatic language the government advisors had prepared. This message would be simple. This message would be honest. "My name is Hayes, and I speak for the people of Earth," she began. Her voice was calm and steady, but there was something else in it. There was the voice of someone who had made a choice and accepted the consequences of that choice. For the last 18 months, humanity has tried to work with the Galactic Council. We have sent ambassadors to their meetings. We have listened to their demands. We have changed our laws to match their requirements. We have limited our weapons programs. We have given them control over our space travel routes. We have done everything they asked. She paused and let the silence fill the space. Today, the Galactic Council has sent us their final demand. They want us to hand over all our weapons. They want us to dismantle our defenses. They want us to surrender our independence and let a council governor rule Earth. They want to tell our children what they can study and what jobs they must do. They want to take everything that makes us human. In council chambers across the galaxy, aliens of many different kinds watched this broadcast. Some were confused. Humans never refused council demands. Humans always found ways to comply and survive. "We are refusing," said. "As of this moment, Earth is withdrawing from all negotiations with the Galactic Council. We will no longer send ambassadors to council meetings. We will no longer accept their authority over our decisions. We will no longer pretend that we can compromise with a power that sees us as possessions." She stood up slightly. Her hands gripped the edges of the desk where she sat. "The Council believes we cannot survive without them. They believe that humans are too weak and too primitive to exist independently. They believe that fear will make us obey. They are wrong." Behind her, on the screens visible in homes across Earth, people began to understand what their leader was saying. They understood that everything was about to change. The safety of being under council authority, even an oppressive authority, was gone. But so was the slow theft of their freedom. "Humanity has survived worse than this," continued. "We survived ice ages when we were weak and had no technology. We survived plagues that killed billions. We survived wars where our own people tried to destroy us. We survived asteroid impacts that should have ended our species forever. And we survived all of this by being stubborn. We survived by refusing to surrender even when surrender seemed like the only option." In the broadcast centers, in government offices, in military installations, people watched. Scientists watched. Workers watched. Parents with their children watched. Soldiers watched. Everyone on Earth watched their leader speak for them to the galaxy. "I know that this choice is frightening," said, and her voice became gentler. "I know that without council support, life will be harder. We will have to do things we have never done before. We will have to work together in ways we have never worked before. We will have to build things ourselves that we had stopped building because the council offered easier alternatives." She looked directly into the camera, directly into the eyes of every human watching and every alien wondering if this species had lost its mind. "But we will survive, and more than that, we will be free. Our children will not grow up knowing that their choices have already been made by someone else. Our scientists will research what they believe is important, not what the council allows. Our artists will create what they feel in their hearts, not what council regulations permit. Our people will have the right to succeed or fail based on their own choices, not on decisions made by an alien governor on some distant council world. In homes on Earth, people began to stand. In offices and factories and research centers, people began to stand. Something was shifting in human society. Something was changing. People were choosing to be free even though it would be hard. To the Galactic Council, said, "You have told us that Earth is too weak to survive alone. You have told us that we need your protection and your guidance. I am telling you that you are wrong. We are the people of Earth. We are the species that was born on a harsh world and survived everything it could throw at us. We are the species that learned to think and create and build. We are the species that will now show you what happens when you give us everything to fight for and nothing left to lose." She stood up from her chair and placed her hand over her heart, a gesture of respect and solidarity that humans had used for generations. "This is our choice. This is our commitment. Earth is free, and we will never bow to the Galactic Council or any power that tries to control us. We ask for the same respect we give to all species. We ask to be treated as equals. We ask for the right to exist as we choose. If you cannot give us these simple things, then we will not negotiate anymore. The time for peace talks has ended." The broadcast cut to Earth, rotating slowly in space. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then the broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, reactions began immediately. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings. Species that had been considering rebellion against Council authority suddenly became bolder. Trade organizations that operated outside Council control reached out to Earth with interest. Allied species that had been pressured to ignore Earth suddenly found reasons to reconsider. But on Earth itself, something more powerful was happening. In every city, people gathered in public squares. They looked up at the sky and they understood that nothing would ever be the same. The easy path was closed. The difficult path was all that remained, and they had chosen to walk it. In government buildings, in military bases, in research centers, people began the work. The work of building a free humanity from scratch. The work of learning to survive without the support of a galactic power. The work of proving that freedom was worth any price. Watching the broadcast from his office felt something he had not felt in months. He felt hope, not the desperate, false hope of someone clinging to a thin possibility, real hope. The hope of a species that had finally decided to fight for its right to exist as something more than slaves. The Council had made its move. Now humanity had made theirs, and everything that came next would be written by people willing to fight for the freedom to write their own story. Captain David walked through the manufacturing facility and felt the heat of the industrial furnaces on his face. The plant had been built 10 years ago to produce simple consumer goods. Now it was producing something much more important. It was producing humanity's future. The first fusion core sat on the assembly line, glowing faintly with the energy contained within it. It was not beautiful. The engineering was rough compared to Council designs. It would require more maintenance and would not last as long. But it worked. It was built by human hands using human technology and human knowledge. Around him, workers moved quickly and efficiently. Engineers checked systems. Technicians calibrated equipment. Everyone in the facility understood what was at stake. Within a week, this plant would need to produce 5 of these cores. Within a month, it would need to produce 50. The survival of Earth depended on the work they did right now. "The power output is lower than we calculated," said Dr. Cross, the chief engineer. He pointed at the readings on his screen. "We are getting about 70% of the theoretical efficiency." "That is acceptable," David said. 70% of a unit we can manufacture is better than 100% of a unit we cannot build." Nodded, he understood the logic. The old way of thinking, the Council way, demanded perfection. Build the perfect thing or do not build at all. But humanity was learning a new way of thinking. Build something that works now. Improve it later. Move forward even if it is not perfect. Across the Atlantic, in a military facility outside London, Dr. Rachel was running tests on a new defensive weapon system. The weapon was crude. It had taken engineers 3 months to design it using only human technology and human knowledge. The Council's weapons were elegant and advanced, and completely beyond human understanding or repair. This weapon was simple. A person could understand how it worked. A person could repair it. A person could improve it. Rachel watched as the test fired. The beam shot out across the testing range and hit the target. The target shattered. The weapon had destroyed it. It was not as powerful as a Council weapon would have been, but it was strong enough. and humanity could build 100 of them if needed. "We have a problem," her assistant said while looking at the data. "The energy draw is huge. We can fire about 5 times before we drain the power cell completely." "How long to recharge?" Rachel asked. 40 minutes. Rachel smiled. "That is fine. Tell them to build them that way. 5 shots per charge. That is how many humans can use them." In offices around the world, other changes were happening. Scientists were looking at old technology that humanity had abandoned when the Council offered better alternatives. Engineers were redesigning agricultural systems to produce more food from less land. Medical teams were reviewing old medicines that humans had created before the Council had offered superior alternatives. President Alex sat in a meeting with economists from every nation on Earth. The news was grim but not hopeless. "We have 3 years of stored supplies," said Finance Minister George Washington. "Oil, grain, rare metals, electronics components. If we are very careful, we can stretch that to 5 years." "And then," Alex asked. "Then we need to start trading with someone," another economist said. "We need external resources." "The Council will try to stop any other species from trading with us," Alex said. "They have already sent warnings to the allied nations." "Then we find species that do not follow Council authority," Johnson said. She was in the meeting via video link from the Military Command Center. "There are traders who operate outside official channels. There are pirate colonies. There are independent worlds that have been waiting for a chance to work with someone who refuses to bow to the Council." "That will take time," Alex said. "And we need to be careful. The Council will use any trade contact as an excuse to attack." "Which is why we need to be ready to fight," said Flatley. "We are building our defenses. We are training our soldiers. Within 6 months, we will have enough firepower to make the Council think twice before attacking a human position directly." In homes across Earth, the reality of their choice was settling in. There was no more music from Council broadcasting systems. There were no more Council shows or entertainment. There were no more Council products in stores. Everything was suddenly local. Everything suddenly had to be built or grown or created by humans. For the first time in a generation, humans were working together with a clear purpose. Artists were designing posters that showed humanity's determination. Musicians were writing songs about human strength and human freedom. Writers were creating stories about heroes who had refused to bow to tyrants. It was not easy. There were shortages. There was some panic. In a few cities, there were riots when people realized what life without the Council would really mean. But in most places, something else happened. People adapted. A woman in Tokyo started a community garden that grew food for her neighborhood. A man organized workers to repair solar panels without Council technology. A teenager in Delhi wrote a program that helped coordinate local resource distribution. Everywhere on Earth, humans were solving problems because they had to. Watched reports from across the planet and felt something shifting in the world. It was not just that humans were surviving without the Council. Humans were discovering that they could survive without the Council. And in discovering that, they were discovering something about themselves. "We thought we needed them," told during a secure video call. "We thought we needed their technology and their resources and their guidance. But we are learning that what we really needed was freedom to think and create and solve our own problems." "The Council will attack," said. "They have to. They cannot allow a species to successfully rebel. If other species see that humanity can survive independently, the entire Council system will begin to break down." "I know," said. "That is why we need to be ready, not to win a war. We cannot win a war against the Council, but to survive long enough and fight hard enough that they decide we are more trouble than we are worth." On assembly lines and in laboratories, in farms and in research centers, humanity worked. The fusion cores came faster now. The weapons became more reliable. The food supplies grew. The medical systems improved. With each day that passed, Earth became more independent and more capable. The Council had believed that isolation would break humanity. What they had not understood was that humanity had already learned to survive through isolation before. Thousands of years before humans had even known other species existed, humans had learned to survive on a harsh world with nothing but their own intelligence and determination. The Council had not understood human history. They did not understand that this species did not need permission to survive. They needed only the freedom to try. And now that freedom had been given, humanity would show what a free species could truly accomplish. The warning came through at 4:15 station time. A council task force was approaching human space. 14 ships had been detected moving toward the Mars colonies and Earth's outer defensive stations. The task force was large enough to destroy any single human installation. It was exactly what humanity had been preparing for. Commander Hart sat in the tactical command center and watched the blips on his screen move closer. Around him, trained operators worked with calm precision. Each person knew their role. Each person knew what would happen if they failed. "All stations report ready," Captain Susan Miller called out. She commanded the communications network that linked every human defensive position across Earth's territories. "We have power to all weapons. Shields are holding at maximum efficiency. Personnel are at battle stations." Nodded, he had trained these people for 6 months. 6 months of drills and simulations and preparation. The ships they were flying were crude and limited compared to Council vessels. But they were piloted by a species that understood warfare in its deepest, most brutal reality. Humans knew how to win when the odds were against them. "Send a message to the task force," said. "Tell them that this space belongs to the Earth Federation. Tell them to turn back or face the consequences." The message was sent. For 3 minutes there was silence. Then the response came through. It was not words. It was a council communication that simply stated the task force's authority and demanded the immediate surrender and disarmament of all human defensive systems. Expected nothing less. The council always demanded surrender before fighting. The council had never needed to fight a species that would actually shoot back. They had never encountered an enemy that would choose violence over obedience. "This is the last warning," broadcast. "Leave this space now." The council task force did not slow. If anything, they accelerated toward the human positions. In their experience, humans would fold under pressure. Humans would see the approaching firepower and agree to comply. Gave the order that would change everything. "Fire!" The human weapons stations opened up. They were not elegant. They were not beautiful. But they were effective. The pulse cannons and missile systems of humanity, designed by a species that had fought endless wars on their home world, launched their attack with devastating coordination. A council frigate took multiple hits. Its shields flared and held. A second frigate was hit by a concentration of fire. Its shield generators overloaded. The ship tumbled in space, its hull breached, its crew dead or dying. The council task force commander, a being of supreme confidence and absolute certainty in the council's superiority, finally understood that something was wrong. These were not primitive weapons. These were not the toys of an immature species. These were weapons designed with cunning and with understanding of how to maximize damage. These were weapons designed by people who had forgotten more about warfare than the council had ever learned. "Return fire," the task force commander ordered, but the response was already too late. The human defensive network was operating with a coherence and efficiency that no council fleet had ever encountered. Each station supported the others. Each weapon platform covered the weaknesses of its neighbors. Each ship in the human fleet was positioned exactly where it needed to be to maximize damage and minimize exposure. The human station commanded by Captain Robert Cooper took 3 direct hits. The station shuddered and listing, but it did not explode. It did not surrender, it kept firing. Lieutenant Thomas Grant was in the medical bay of that station when the first impact hit. The station shook. Alarms screamed. For a moment he thought the entire station was finished, but the structural integrity held, the shielding held, the people holding that station held. Thomas moved to the windows and looked out at the battle. It was beautiful and terrible. Weapons fire crossed the void like deadly meteors, ships maneuvered with desperate grace, and humanity was not dying. Humanity was winning. After 30 minutes of engagement, 3 council ships were destroyed completely. 4 more were crippled beyond any ability to continue fighting. The rest of the task force, realizing they were facing an enemy unlike anything in their experience, initiated a retreat. The human fleet did not pursue. They had not been designed or prepared for deep pursuit operations. But they did not need to. The council ships ran. They jumped to their faster-than-light drives and fled human space as quickly as they could manage. The human stations hung in space, damaged but intact. The victory was not clean. Many humans had been killed, many ships had been lost, but the fact remained that the Council had attacked and humanity had survived. More than that, humanity had fought back. In the command center, Hart sat for a moment in complete silence. The operators around him were processing what had just happened. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a species had resisted the Galactic Council in direct combat and prevailed. Not because they had superior numbers or technology, but because they were more brutal and more willing to win than anyone the Council had ever fought. Casualty reports, said finally. The numbers came through: 473 humans dead, another 1,200 injured, 2 major stations heavily damaged, but 17 Council ships destroyed or crippled. A task force sent to intimidate humanity had instead become a lesson in underestimating an enemy. Messages started coming in from across human space. Celebrations were breaking out. People understood that something fundamental had changed. Humanity had looked the Galactic Council in the face and refused to blink. Humanity had fought and humanity had not run. Humanity had proven that they would not be controlled by fear. But understood the reality. This was not the end of the fight. This was the beginning. The Council would send more ships. They would send larger forces. They would try to crush humanity and make an example of a species that had dared to refuse their authority. Which meant humanity had to prepare for something far larger. Which meant every resource, every person, every weapon had to be focused on survival. Opened a secure communication channel to Johnson. When the general appeared on the screen, spoke only a few words. They will be back, and they will be angry. Nodded. She already knew. She was already preparing. Then we need to be more ready than we were today, she said. We need more weapons. We need more soldiers. We need more ships. We need to show them that humanity will not just survive a task force. Humanity will survive anything they send at us. And if we cannot, asked. Then we die free, said simply, and that is infinitely better than living as slaves. On Earth, celebrations were fading and the real work was beginning. The people of humanity understood now that they had truly broken with the Council. There was no going back. There was no negotiation. There was only the choice to keep fighting or to give in. Humanity had made its choice. They would keep fighting. And the galaxy would learn what that meant. 3 months after the battle above Mars, humanity received its first official message from an independent species. They were traitors. They did not follow Council authority. They did not ask permission to do business. They simply saw an opportunity and moved toward it. Dr. the Trade Minister of Earth received the message in a secure facility. They wanted to send a delegation to Earth to discuss trade arrangements. They wanted to supply humanity with resources that the Council had cut off. They wanted something in return. They wanted human technology. They wanted human weapons. They wanted access to the determination and brutal practical thinking of a species that had proven it could fight. Understood immediately. The victory at Mars had changed everything. It had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a species that could be controlled through intimidation. It had shown that humanity was not a species that would bow to the Council. And other species, other nations that had been waiting for someone to break the Council's grip, had finally found someone to work with. Within weeks, trade agreements had been finalized. Ships began arriving at the new docking stations that humanity had hastily constructed. These ships did not carry Council technology. They carried raw materials. They carried food and metals and energy cells and 100 other things that humanity needed to survive. And what humanity gave in return was not subservience or obedience. Humanity gave weapons. Humanity gave knowledge. Humanity gave its determination to anyone who wanted to stand against the Council. On Earth, the transformation was accelerating. The fusion cores that had been crude and limited were now being improved every week. The weapons that had been basic were being refined and made more effective. And most importantly, the people of Earth had stopped looking like victims of the Council. They had started looking like a force that other species could ally with. Captain David stood in the new manufacturing district and watched the assembly lines working day and night. The output had quadrupled in the last month. 3 weeks ago, this facility had been producing 5 fusion cores per week. Now it was producing 50. The workers had organized themselves into teams that optimized every process. They had stopped waiting for perfect instructions and started solving problems as they came. We will reach 100 units per week by the end of the month, David told Dr. Cross. If we double the shifts and bring in more workers. Do it, said. The military is requesting more power units for the new defensive stations. They are building positions across 3-star systems now. Humanity is expanding, not contracting. In the military research centers, Dr. Rachel was overseeing the development of a completely new generation of weapons. The first generation had been basic and crude. The second generation was learning from combat experience. But the third generation would be something the Council had never seen before. Weapons that were simpler, more reliable, and more devastatingly effective than anything that had come before. "We are thinking wrong," Rachel told her team. "We are still trying to be like the Council. We are trying to match their sophistication. We need to stop. We need to build weapons that are human, weapons that use human thinking, weapons that maximize what we know and minimize what we do not." The weapons that came from that philosophy were not elegant. They were not beautiful, but they were absolutely terrifying to anyone who understood what they could do. A Council weapons designer looking at human weapons might see primitiveness. A human military strategist looking at Council weapons might see complexity they could not replicate, but the truth was simple. Humanity had learned to weaponize practical thinking. Was receiving visitors now. Delegations from species across the galaxy were coming to Earth. Some came from worlds that had been oppressed by the Council for centuries. Some came from places where the Council's grip was weakening. Some came from traders and merchants who saw profit in an emerging power that was not bound by Council restrictions. "We do not ask for your loyalty to Earth," told each delegation. "We ask only that you respect our right to exist as we choose, just as we will respect your right to do the same." It was a simple message, but it was revolutionary. The Council had always demanded loyalty. The Council had always demanded obedience, but humanity offered something different. Humanity offered partnership based on mutual respect. President Alex stood in the new international spaceport and looked out at the ships that were being constructed. They were not Council designs. They were not elegant or advanced by Council standards. They were practical and human and utterly functional. And they were being built at a rate that was increasing every month. "The Council is concerned," said General Johnson, who was standing beside her. "Our intelligence shows that they are building a larger task force, a much larger one. They are determined to crush humanity before the rebellion spreads to other species." "Let them come," Alex said. She looked at the women and men working on the ships. She looked at engineers and soldiers and scientists all working together to build a future that was free. "We are no longer afraid of the Council. We are no longer hiding. We are building something that they can never understand because it is based on something they have forgotten." "What is that?" asked. "Freedom," Alex said simply. "They have ruled through control for so long that they have forgotten what it means to have people who choose to work together because they believe in something larger than themselves. We are not working for the Council. We are not working because we are afraid of punishment. We are working because this is our home, and we are determined to keep it free." In homes across Earth and in the new colonies that humanity was building on Mars and in space stations, children were growing up differently than they had before. They were growing up knowing that their world was dangerous, but it was theirs. They were growing up learning that they could create things and build things and survive things through their own effort. In schools, teachers taught human history. They taught about ice ages and plagues and wars and the way humans had survived everything thrown at them. They taught children that humans were not the fastest or the strongest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but humans were the most determined. Humans were the most adaptable. Humans refused to accept that they could not survive. And now the galaxy was learning that for itself. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings. Their dominance had lasted for 3,000 years. They had never encountered a species that would not bow. They had never met an enemy that would fight to the last person rather than surrender. They had assumed that the universe worked a certain way, and humanity was violating all the rules of that universe. "We must crush them now," argued the representative, "before they become too strong, before other species lose their fear of us." "But the cost will be enormous," said another representative. "We may win the war against humanity, but the rebellion will have already started with 100 other species. We cannot fight everyone." The Council was beginning to understand what it meant to have allowed a free species to rise in their midst. They understood that they could destroy Earth. They could send a fleet so large that humanity could not possibly resist. But they also understood that in destroying humanity, they would prove that the Council was not a universal force of order, but just another power that could be challenged. And once that idea took hold in the minds of other species, the Council would face challenge after challenge until their dominance finally crumbled. Sat in his office and received reports from traders and merchants and allies across the galaxy. Trade was flowing, ships were coming, weapons were being shared, technology was being exchanged. Most importantly, hope was spreading. Other species were beginning to think that maybe they did not need the council. Maybe they could organize themselves. Maybe they could be free. The council had created this by pushing too hard. They had created this by demanding too much. They had created this by showing humanity exactly what they wanted to take and making humanity willing to fight with everything they had to prevent it. In the stars above Earth, ships were being built. On the ground, weapons were being created. In cities and towns and villages, people were working together toward a future that was uncertain but was their own. The Galactic Council had gone too far. They had pushed a species that had survived everything into a corner. They had given humanity everything to fight for and nothing left to lose. And now the galaxy would learn what happens when you awaken a species that has been sleeping. Humanity was awake, humanity was free, and humanity would never bow again.